Shalom, this is Pastor David's Daily Bread Guide message. Today's chapter is Deuteronomy 20. This is titled as The Responsibilities of the Spiritual Leaders Before Going to War. So the chapter is talking about what should be remembered before going to war. And verse 1 says, "When you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid of them, because the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, will be with you." So it says we shouldn't be afraid, even though we see horses and chariots and the army greater than ours. Verse 3 also says, "He shall say, Hear, Israel, today you are going into battle against your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not panic or be terrified by them." And verse 4 says, "For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory." So we should have the faith that God is with us and God is against our enemies to give us victory. It's very important to remove the fear from the heart of the armies. God is greater than our enemies, and such spiritual confirmation and faith is what should be given to the armies, and that is the mission, the responsibility of the spiritual leaders, to give such faith and confirmation, trust to the armies that God is with them and they shouldn't be afraid of their enemies. Why are we in the fear? Why are we afraid of? It's because we look at ourselves, not God and His greatness and His goodness. So here we learn that what we have to fix our eyes on is God, the greater God than our enemies, not the situation we are put in. And in Numbers 14, when Israel people look at the land of Canaan, then the fear came into them. So they become afraid of the people in the Canaan. So what is the secret of the victory is the trust and belief that we're going to have the victory. We should have the faith that God has already given us the land. This is already given to us. Such faith will open up our way to the land of Canaan. This is also repeated in Exodus chapter 14, when the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, and Moses said, "Be still and see what God will do for us." Here the small conclusion is that we shouldn't look at ourselves or our situation, but we have to fix our eyes on God and His greatness, because He is with us and He is against our enemies. The second part of the chapter is about the responsibility of the officers, verse 5 to 9. So their first responsibility is to let the people go back to their own house from the war. So verse 5, it says there are four kinds of people who should go back to their house. 5, the officers shall say to the army, "Has anyone built a new house and not yet begun to live in it? Let him go home, or he may die in battle and someone else may begin to live in it." The second type of people is, verse 6, "Has anyone planted a vineyard and not begun to enjoy it? Let him go home." And the third type is verse 7, Has anyone become pledged to a woman and not married her? Let him go home. And the fourth type, verse 8, is anyone afraid or faint-hearted? Let him go home, so that his fellow soldiers will not become disheartened too. So the purpose of letting them go home is because the soldiers will not become disheartened. This is very important to establish the spiritual atmosphere before the war among the community, among the soldiers. That's why the responsibility of the officers is to let people go home if they are not ready spiritually. The second responsibility of the officers is in verse 9. When the officers have finished speaking to the army, they shall appoint commanders over it. So the second responsibility is to appoint the commanders. Verse 10 to 15 is about the characteristics that the Israelites should have when they have the war against other nations. So it says we first have to declare the peace to them before the war. But verse 16 to 20, this is the attitude that the Israelites should have when they have the war against the land of Canaan. It says they have to kill everyone because this is the land where the Israelites should live forever. But however, it says it's not right to make a war for the purpose of having the war. To make the conclusion of the chapter, this is the main message here is that we should live according to our faith and we should reside in the Word of God. Not our situation, but our faith that God is for us, God is against our enemies. And even though our enemies are greater than us, we have to look at God who is greater than our enemies. So I bless you to have such faith, to have the victory in God.